Hi, thanks so much for joining in. We're talking about Your Money Matters on NDTV Profit because we understand that your money matters. My name is Alex Matthew. Now, on this program, we speak about a range of financial issues that you are faced with. Of course, everything to do with investments, everything to do with your expenses, basically anything to do with money. And on today's program, I'd like to speak about insurance and how people rate this in the pecking order of the financial instruments that they partake in. And it's interesting, Policybazaar has conducted a report for the second year running, and it has asked people to rank, in their opinion, the top 3 financial products they must have in their portfolio. And the results are quite interesting, at least the way that I see it, because mutual funds only ranked in 17% of the top 3. And if that was surprising, there's actually health insurance that ranks higher. And it was mutual funds or SIPs. So to talk about some of the findings, and in fact, there's more, of course, that they have asked people, Policybazaar, I'm joined by Sarbvir Singh, who's a Joint Group Chief Executive Officer of the company. Sarbvir, thanks so much for taking the time. Absolute pleasure having you on the program. Let me ask you about this. Gold, obviously, understandably ranking at 54%, right on top there. Were you surprised by ULIPs being second?
I think, Alex, first, thanks for having us on your show. I think the way I would look at the pecking order is that people look at things, so fixed deposits, gold, these are traditional, investment options that people have used over the years. I think when we say ULIPs, I think they mean more life insurance policies, not just ULIP as a specific category. And that is because if you see in India, almost 26 crore households or crore individuals have life insurance policies of one kind or the other. So that is, I think, the reason why life insurance comes out ahead. But as you said, I think what is more interesting to us is the fact that health insurance has climbed so high. And the fact that it's at number 4, just shows all the impact that perhaps COVID, all the other options that have emerged after COVID have had on people. And people have finally understood that health insurance is a really important part of their financial planning.
To drive home this point, though, Sarbvir, I'm just trying to understand the nuances of this survey, if you can call it that. I want to understand the distribution of this, because as I understand it, there are 4,000 odd respondents spread across the length and breadth of the country. Yes. And just help me understand this particular question that you asked the respondents, which is you showed them a list of financial instruments and you said, rank the top 3 that you must have, right? Is that how you asked it?
Yes, I think what we do it in 2 ways. One is, like you said, we covered almost 3,500 people, I think, across 35, 40 cities, across city classification, because I think it's also very important to get to the real India versus, metro India or, some other parts of the country. And then secondly, like you said, we asked them a question saying that of these, choices, which choices do you think are most important? And then there is also a qualitative part where they are allowed to, give input in terms of saying that, if they've selected something or they want to add a category which is not on the list or something. So it's a pretty, I would say, sizable effort, not just from a quantitative perspective, but also qualitatively to understand what the customer or the consumer is thinking. And that was actually our goal this year. We wanted to go beyond asking, very superficial questions that are you aware of insurance or are you not aware of insurance, to really getting into what do they understand by insurance, what are the options, and I'm sure as we talk further, we'll cover some of those areas also.
Indeed. I want to delve a little deeper into some of the questions you asked about health insurance, because I have spoken to your colleagues as well in the recent past, Sarbvir, about increase in premium costs, and the point that they were making, I think this is before the results of this survey were even known, was that costs are going up at the bottom end of the insurance landscape. So sub 5 lakh policies or 5 lakh policies on the health insurance side are seeing higher increases in premia. But it was evident at that time as well that more people are going for those products. What did you ask about the coverage that people are seeking or have, and what were the insights that you received?
So, Alex, actually, if you see Policybazaar, we have been on this continuous mission to educate consumers about the actual costs of healthcare. And I think a lot of us probably are aware that when you actually get into a situation, the costs tend to be much higher than what one thinks before the event. And one of the things that we obviously asking the question as to how much sum insured you bought is a fairly straightforward question. But I think the more interesting question is to check whether people understand the costs of various procedures or the costs of being in hospital, for n number of days or depending on the disease, etc. So I think what came out of this survey is that almost people almost underestimate by half the actual cost of, let's say, a cancer or a heart procedure, or some knee replacement and things like that. So I think what is happening is that there is healthcare inflation, so the costs are going up each year. Many of us, fortunately, I would say in this case, don't always have exposure to what it actually costs today. We may have a very historical sense of what it cost when we heard about it. And so, there's this gap between what people think they should be covered and what they are actually covered. And that's where this 5 lakh number that you referenced comes into account. And I must tell you that this is actually an improvement, because if we had done this, especially pre-COVID, this 5 lakh number would have been 2-3 lakhs. So I think, yes, it is 5 lakhs. Maybe it should be 10 lakhs. But the good news is that we are definitely on the right track.
I mean, 27% of respondents, I take that as positive. 27% of respondents said that they have between 5 and 10 lakhs, and it's going up, right? So 14%, 10 to 20 lakh is also a positive. So incremental change is definitely good. Focus on the glass half full, I guess, Sarbvir. But so I do want to ask you about that, because I'm sure that you've also studied as an organization how much these costs have gone up, and also the list of ailments that are most common. Do you have any insight on that? Because I would think that with the rising cases of cardiac issues, that would rank as one of the most spent on medical ailments that I guess that insurance is claimed for. Do you have insight on that?
Yes, absolutely. So, India also, as we are growing richer and to some extent our lifestyles are becoming more sedentary, I think lifestyle diseases, as they are called, are becoming a greater portion of diseases that we see claims being made for. So as you said, heart and heart-related ailments are one big category. There is always a big category around, which is not as frequent, but the severity is very high, which is related to cancer and some of the, offshoots of that. Then there are, mostly diabetes and cholesterol related, maybe other, issues that come up from time to time. This could be in the form of something happening to your kidneys, or various things related to that. And then of course there are infectious diseases which are more seasonal and which come and go depending on on the time of the year. So I think what we see is that the underestimation tends to be more on procedures in the first few categories, where whether it's a curing of a cancer or even of heart disease. Like today, there are increasing number of bypass surgeries again coming to the fore. So while stents, etc., are more commonly used, but in many cases, especially if the patient is younger, surgeons prefer to do bypass so that it has more permanence. Now, of course, that costs a lot more. And again, in metro cities, the costs of especially the top tier hospitals, keep increasing. Healthcare inflation runs anywhere between 10 to 15% a year. And as you can imagine, that adds up very fast. I mean, 15% a year is doubling every 5 years.
So then from that perspective, and again, I saw some interesting insights in the tiers of cities and the respondents from different tiers as well. And incidentally, the fact that 8% of respondents in tier 2 cities have a 50 lakh cover or 50 lakh plus cover is quite interesting. But in your opinion, and this is not a one size fit all kind of a solution, you can do a summation of parts, because people can take super top ups as well. But what is the kind of cover that individuals should have, in your opinion?
So I think on that, Alex, I think more is better in this case. The way, at least we look at it, is that in metro cities, if you are a family, you should look at something in the order of 10 lakhs per person. So, maybe somewhere between 25 and 50 lakhs is minimum. We've also seen that, we have plans, as you said, with super top up being used as a as a tool to increase the cover. So supposing you buy a 10 or 25 lakhs and then you buy a 75 lakh super top up, which can be a very efficient way of getting very high sum insured. And I think I would recommend, especially for people living in the bigger cities, not just the metros, but even in the top 10, 15, 20 cities, to really think about as much health insurance as they can afford. Because what happens is that once you are in a certain sum insured band, then the costs of maintaining that tend to be lower, and especially if you start early. And then as you grow older, when the requirement for that might be more likely, you are well covered. Of course, if affordability is a challenge, then I would definitely say that in the metro cities, you should have at least 10 lakhs. And I would say in a smaller city, you could probably do with 5 to 7 lakhs as well.
Yeah. Again, this is not something that is a one-size-fit-all, because ultimately underwriting is on a per-case basis. But Sarbvir, just to drive home the point, I'm sure that you have some of these numbers at your fingertips, which is why I'm asking, incremental cost as you rise up the coverage spectrum, does it go up very dramatically, or in fact, is it not very dramatic?
In fact, Alex, the incremental cost tends to go down very dramatically. And if you see, there are two kinds of situations. One is, of course, a super top-up, where literally for 3,000-4,000 rupees, maybe 5,000 rupees, you can get as much as 90 lakh rupees of coverage. Of course, on top of an existing policy. So this only comes into play after the first 5 or 10 lakh rupees are used. But still, from a family's perspective, I think that is incredibly efficient in terms of coverage. The second thing is that there are now a set of products which have a very high, I would say, no claim bonus, or even in some cases, even if you make a claim, you can buy a rider and the no claim bonus is secured. Now, in these products, you can go from 1x to 7x over a period of, let's say, 3, 4, 5 years. Now, in these cases also, the extra sum insured comes at a very low price per lakh, or whatever you want to look at it. So I think now the incentive to actually buy more sum insured is actually very good, because the incremental sum insured comes at a very low cost as compared to the first 5 lakhs or first 10 lakhs. And of course, that's what one would expect also.
Certainly. We've focused primarily, of course, on health insurance, but there were also insights in your report on term insurance, and it's still something that is not finding enough takers, I think, and it's an uphill battle. But Sarbvir, thanks so much for joining me today. Absolute pleasure having you on the program.
Thank you. Thanks, Alex.